let's bring in our panel to discuss retail sales and the state of the consumer. Jharonne Martis is Director of Consumer Research at LSEG. She joins me here at the desk. And Jeff Weniger is Head of Equities at Wisdom Tree, and he's joining in remotely. Jeff, Jharonne, great to have you both here with us. So we had two big reads on the state of the consumer today with retail sales and with Walmart reporting too. So Jharonne, let's start with you. Biggest takeaways from Walmart. What did it tell us about the state of Walmart and really the state of the consumer, because it's the nation's biggest retailer?
Well, without a doubt, it was another stellar quarter for Walmart. I mean, global ads grew 50%. E-commerce saw a profit for the first time. Same-store sales 4.5, driven by the growth in store and also the amount of spending. So it was another stellar quarter for Walmart. The quarter we saw that consumers definitely shopped. They stuck to mainly health, wellness, and groceries, which is already telling us a little bit of that shift that consumers are spending more on staples more than discretionary. In the previous quarters with Walmart, we used to see more discretionary spending. Now we're seeing that the strength was mainly staples.
So that doesn't sound very good for Target when it reports.
No, and they're expected to report next week.
Okay,
Yes.
So we'll have to pay attention to that discretionary purchase for Target. Jeff, want to bring you into the conversation to discuss also the retail sales print. We got April retail sales. The expectation was that there was going to be all this pull forward in March. Seems like April, not stellar, but not bad.
Not half bad. Things were all right. It was there was a pull forward in March, but that's kind of a street consensus thing. It was a known quantity, and to some extent there was a pull forward in January and February, probably on the purchasing manager side as well. And I was putting together charts. That's what I do for a living, is put together a lot of these macro charts. And I'm looking at it in core retail sales on a year-over-year basis. You're plus 4.2. The other day we had CPI in the low twos, and so you have a nice little buffer there. This is an economy that's not gangbusters, but not in recession or even threatening recession. If you go over to Polymarket and look at the recession odds, it's 38%. Yikes! I don't think it's that high. I think it's more like a 15 or 20. I mean, the good news is that they were anticipating maybe like a 60% of recession maybe 5-6 weeks ago, but still 38 seems really high. Nothing about this data flow is really surprising me to the up or downside. It's kind of just one of these ho-hum situations.
So Jeff, sticking with that, I mean, I will say to your point, 38% seems low compared to what we heard essentially a month ago from some of these economists. We know that the expectations can change on a dime here, or with the announcement of certain trade delays or temporary reprieves here. But if the economy is steady, how should we be thinking about the consumer then, especially as we start to hear from some of these other retailers, in the next couple weeks?
Well, and we'll have to see. I mean, we still have this lag through effect of essentially all these people locked in their homes, and you have that frozen nature of housing activity. We had this Fed senior loan officer survey came in 4 or 5 days ago, and it was punk. And you don't want to see tightening lending standards here, especially when the concept that's making the rounds is, people being late on their credit cards and so forth. But, I mean, essentially, you've got a situation where the stock market is back up, and maybe there's a wealth effect from that. Maybe it's too much too fast to get the S&P from 4,900 up to 5,900. But there has been this notable sentiment change. And the other thing I would point out with respect to the consumer and their willingness to go out on Saturday night and catch a movie, buy a hamburger, whatever you may do that is a discretionary type situation, is there is already so much baked into the cake on the Michigan Consumer Confidence Survey, which is coming out tomorrow, that basically it doesn't even matter how far into the basement that report is. It doesn't get too much lower from a contrarian perspective. We've found that historically, when you're in the 50s and 60s on that, which is where we will be probably with 99% certainty in tomorrow's survey, you end up seeing the stock market goes up almost every single time in the year after, because you're taking sentiment from such an extreme into maybe a middling ground.
Okay. All right, yeah, the soft data has certainly been soft, Jharonne, so that's really the expectation. But as we start to think about other names set to report next week and the weeks after next week, we have Home Depot, Lowe's, TJX, Urban Outfitters, Ross Stores. There's a whole slew of names on tap. I think what worries me is that Walmart did say that they might start to raise prices as soon as this month. So if Walmart's starting to raise prices, I can only imagine what some of these other retailers are doing. So who's best positioned to kind of weather this tariff storm, but also to, potentially pass those prices on to their customers?
So Walmart is definitely the best positioned, and this is mainly because of its exposure. It's shielded from a lot of the international imports and tariffs. Still, having said that, when we look at our LSEG data, it is less bullish than what we just discussed. For the current quarter, retailers are reporting first quarter earnings, and that is an expectation of a growth of 7.5%. However, looking forward to the next quarter, we're expected to see a drop of 0.9%. And this will be the first negative showing since the pandemic. So analysts polled by LSEG have been a little bit bearish on what will happen in the second quarter and already see that the consumer is pulling back. Still, when the consumer does decide to spend and splurge a little bit, yes, they're going to the restaurants and they're going to the movies. But in general, when it comes to discretionary, we might see a big drop in the second quarter.
We only have 10 seconds left. Do you think we'll hear that in the guidance, or will there even be guidance?
We're already hearing it in the guidance. 83% of the companies that have reported are already talking about tariffs and have been giving us a significant amount of negative guidance.
Okay. Jharonne, Martis, Jeff Weniger, thank you both so much for your insights.